Stay hopeful.
Stay hopeful.
Stay hopeful.
Stay hopeful.
All right, so hey man, say man, it's Brother Charles.
And I'm Jasmine.
And welcome to another wonderful episode of the Hopeful Romantics podcast, where we love life, we love the Lord, and we love love. Today we have a special, so special,
Yes,
talented, published, teaching guest, Brennan Steele, man. Thank you for joining us, Brennan.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm definitely honored to be here.
So I think the easiest way to start off with Brennan is, one, we went to school together at Duke. We graduated class of 2018. Go Blue Devils. But
Hold on.
The excitement was
that's
there.
how I never said Devils in her life. And you can tell based off it.
Go Blue Devils. But no, we met sophomore year. We're both RAs. Phenomenal team. Like, Brennan was a phenomenal person then. He's a phenomenal person now. Post-graduation, he has become an author and he continues to be an educator. So how did we, and of course, like, we'll give you a moment to introduce yourself, Brennan. But after you briefly introduce yourself, how did we get to becoming an author? And I'll let you explain what that means to you and how we got to that place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talked about the important pieces. My name is Brennan Steele. I am an educator. I'm a believer, and I'm an author. Originally from Nashville, Tennessee. We went to school together at Duke, and then I now live in Memphis, Tennessee. I teach 7th grade math.
God bless you.
Yes. Especially virtually, it's been a challenge. But yeah, I love my kids, so that's why I do it every day. And outside of that, I recently founded Breathe Brother, which is the movement connected to the journal Breathe, a guided healing journal for Black men. So how did I get to being an author? That's a loaded question. I think I can't talk about my being a published author now without talking about the journey between college and now. I think so. Background for me, I think the biggest thing I'm recovering from continuously is perfectionism and performance. And so I think growing up, I always was in very high achieving environments and always felt like I had to produce or perform at a certain level. And so that transitioned into college, obviously, Duke being a very elite school. And so like everything that I was doing was measured by my grades, was measured by what leadership positions I was in. Everything was just highly competitive, highly selective. And I think that moving into adulthood, you don't have the same structures. So it's kind of like all the things you didn't deal with before, at least for me, I had to deal with. And so it's kind of like I grew up and I experienced trauma, experienced different things, and just stuff that never dealt with it. Got to be an adult, and then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing as a teacher. I did Teach for America, and so those of you know, it's a 6-week program to make you be a teacher. So you're ready maybe for the first day. Second day, who knows?
Yeah.
So it was like all of that, and then was just trying to find my identity, find my space in adulthood. I think I tried to apply the same structures from college and high school to adulthood, and it didn't work. So like, for instance, my kids, I tried to make my worth in my identity and my worth in their academic performance. So my first exam I gave, my kids were 15% proficient. And I was like, what? I've never seen data this low ever. Like, that's not what I do. And so I was like, in college, the mindset was like, all right, I'm gonna put hours and hours in and then do better on the next paper, on the next exam. So I was like, let me put more hours into my work. The next time I got 16% proficient. So it was like,
okay, progress.
We went up there. It wasn't like the rate of the return on the investment wasn't worth it. And so from there was kind of like a crisis for me, honestly, and I really just started dealing with a lot of my identity, and the kind of wounds of my past, and then started going to counseling and did like a lot of ugly work. Like 2020 has been hard globally, but 2019 was like hard personally for me. That was like probably the hardest year I've had in my life. And so I think from there, it was just kind of, I started to do a lot of the healing, a lot of the transformation. And then 2020 hit, and then we had um, COVID hit. And so it's like, oof, like I'm okay, kind of.
Yeah.
This is hitting harder than I thought it was going to. I have some tools, like I have time to focus on myself. It's not great, but it'll be all right. And then you had the murders of George Floyd, and then or Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, so on and so forth. And I was just like, I'm done. Like I couldn't do it. And I just, for me, it took a while to kind of really process. I think eventually after that, I was starting to think about just my brothers who don't have the experience that I had of going through counseling.
Yeah.
Like there's dealing with the continued, like everybody has wounds and trauma in their own stories. But then doing that on top of like viewing racial trauma all the time, I was just like, yo, like how's anybody doing this?
Yeah.
So that kind of led to the journey of writing Breathe. I really feel like it was divinely inspired, and it just came from that. So I'll pause right there. But that's kind of, I was like, I can't do it just from this year. It definitely was been a few years in the making.
Crazy, man.
That's
Because
so
if
real.
you order Breed, which is available right now on Amazon, you know what I'm saying. But if you look at it, and it's a 45-day journal, and there's so many different prompts that are really fine-tuned and tailored to the experiences of Black men, but it also can be connected to Black women's experiences as well. And when you look at it, I connected to it almost immediately, because I know through my own mental health journey, a lot of it was trying to find the best ways to make sure that I was being poured into in all aspects. And racially is one of the main aspects that I needed to be poured into. I couldn't imagine. I know it's a lot of brothers who can connect to this, who go to therapy. I was never comfortable going to a white therapist.
Yeah.
Because if someone was killed by the police who looked like me, I don't feel like going to go talk to somebody who looked like the police officer.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying? And I think that a journal that was fine-tuned with me, because as believers too, we'll go on the Bible app, do a devotional, and you can tell who wrote it, right? It's certain examples, and it's like talking, and you talk about that too, talking about like hunting or like
right.
different activities. It's like, bro, I'm not throwing on no camo. That literally are just from a community that seems a little alienated, right, to our experiences. And I really appreciate it. Just as soon as you open up the book, you kind of referencing that and really looking into the fact that there's so many experiences that we as Black men need to talk about, but shape who we are. And I really thank you for just pouring that into the book, because it immediately creates this space that I feel just isn't as available to us as Black men. And I want to go back to what you said when it talks about the ugly work, right? When we talk about our mental health journeys. And I just want you, if it's not too much, like just kind of talk about the different elements of what ugly work might look like, especially in the Black male context.
Yeah. I think so. I started counseling at like March of 2019. For the second time, I tried it at Duke, and was not ready. Was not ready, and also Duke, it was like 6 weeks, and it was like that's all you get. So
That's what you get. Yeah.
yeah. But this time around, I think I always say it took maybe 9 months for me to actually like buy into it.
Wow.
Like I remember some of those first sessions, I felt like he was attacking my character. I felt like my counselor's a Black man, so he was not trying to be soft with me or nothing. He knew exactly the things that I was dealing with. And so he was speaking directly into them. And so I think that was just like a lot for me. I think that some of the specific things that were ugly were coming to terms with. I knew my parents weren't perfect, but I didn't realize that they had impacted me that much. I think specifically, I had started to do some of the work around my relationship with my father, and we just kind of drilled into that really deeply. And then to see some of the things that I had kind of gained from my father or inherited from my father and was kind of reifying in my own life was like, yo, like this is a lot.
Yeah.
I think about a lot of my story is around the way that I perform masculinity. And so really like drilling into that and some of the things that I believed about myself that weren't always the healthiest or weren't necessarily true. And I think like my counselor, his kind of philosophy is like in counseling, we're we're finding our way back to your true self. After all of the wounds, after all of the disappointment, the drama, all of everything, the trauma and everything, like has piled onto your true self, we gotta rip all of that. It's like peeling back an onion in a way. And so it is tears. I never cried in counseling. I always cried after counseling or whenever I did homework for counseling. I would just be boo-hooing. And I this is coming from someone from 12 to like 19. I didn't cry at all. And so yeah, it's ugly, just to say the least of it. But I think there is a turning point, like the more you start to reveal.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me has always been recognizing the fact that there's been so many different ways in the way Black men are anticipated when it comes to how we're supposed to maneuver mental health. So I know the usual conversation is like, you know, like Black folk, we're not even allowed to be vulnerable, stuff like that. But I think we're starting to transition out of that. I think there's more conversations now where I think more people are at least coming to terms with the idea that we need to invest in our own mental health.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that if I'm talking more and more with like dudes who I know in my past probably would have been deemed like hyper masculine and stuff like that, are really starting to recognize like there's some elements of my past that I should probably if I want to become a better person. And I think overall we're stepping in the right direction. But what would you say, and you can take pieces from your book, what are some like actual tangible steps for an individual who feels themselves transitioning out of kind of the wrongdoings and unlearning the elements of what the community was telling us probably 10, 15, maybe like 5 years ago when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing and probably the most important in my opinion is surrounding yourself with a community of brothers who are doing what you envision for yourself. I think about that in terms of my relationship. So like I know I'm recently engaged, and it's funny when
hold up. We was waiting, you know what I'm saying? So somebody figured this got a little heavier. Congratulations.
Thank you. But on that point, like it's crazy because I feel like it was like God orchestrating it, but now I'm more intentional about it. Like when I moved to Memphis, first of all, Memphis is the first place that I had a strong group of guy friends. I struggled to make guy friends prior to Memphis. But also all of my guy friends, except for like one or two, are married. And so I think about that on that perspective. Like it gives me a perspective, like when I was dating Adriana, like it helped me see like specifically what I was like from their relationships, like what I wanted, and then help me be a better man in that relationship. Wow. I think about that connected to your mental health too. Like I have homies that like we literally like we can talk to each other about anything. And it's like you're not used to having a community of guys specifically where like you say like you're talking about deep things. But my best friend in Memphis knows when I ask how you doing, like he cannot just say good. Like he has to say specifically how he's feeling because I'm gonna keep asking him Like, what does that mean? What do you mean good? Like, how's this specific thing? Like, I'm gonna be up in your business straight up. Like, how are you doing here? When's the last time you were struggling here? Because I know his story, he knows mine, and he does the same thing for me. And so I think that is honestly the biggest thing, is like really working to like surround yourself, not just with anybody, surround yourself with people, specifically for Black men, other brothers who are on that same journey with you, or what you envision for yourself.
Yeah. That's
wow.
great. You got one.
So, I mean, I'm just sitting here because no, but honestly, it's fascinating for me to sit here like next to my fiance, like talking about mental health in regards to Black men, because I've been surrounded by Black men my whole life. I got my dad, and then I have 3 brothers, only siblings I have. And I don't know if I necessarily, before I probably the last 2 years, kind of differentiated between like mental health journeys of Black men and Black women. You know, to me, it was always just like, as a community, we need to do better in this regard. You know, kind of separating those two took me a while. And I think now, as a sister, as a daughter, as a fiance, as a future wife, what are ways that you would want like us as partners to show up better for Black men?
Yeah. I think it all comes down to knowing what is your brother or your fiance, your partner, whoever it is, like knowing them and knowing how, like the difficulty level for them, that the work that they're doing is. So like there was a point for me where like my fiance knew not to press too hard, because I had already done, like, for instance, if I have counseling session, like there was times like I'm better now, but right towards the beginning, like she knew I wasn't coming over after a counseling session, because it was just that emotionally draining that I didn't have that much to give after. And I think it's like respecting that, because I think there is sometimes like, because I'm thinking about partners, our partners love us so much that they want to kind of aid in the process.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like sometimes if you got somebody who is there, you can, but a lot of times we're not there yet. Like I think about is when I wrote the book, I thought about it so last year I taught 8th grade. I thought about the emotional level of most Black men at the level of the academic level of my 8th graders. And so thinking about how I had to kind of break it down more, and not saying that like Black men aren't smart, they're very smart, but like, it's just, you got to take it. We're not at the level all the time. Y'all been, a lot of women have been thinking about their emotions for the most of their lives.
That's
like
real.
Men are not always taught to do that. And so when they start, it's like, whew, give me a second. Like, I just made this crazy revelation. I'm not ready to discuss it with you totally yet, but give me a little bit. So I think like that patience piece, and like really knowing like how your partner, or if it's a brother or son, even how they are, like just really like centering that. I think the other thing is there is, I don't know, I think for me what's been helpful is, as I am making all of these other realizations about me and myself, the affirmation from my fiance has been more important. And it's not even on this like, you're the best person in the world. It's just like, I love you.
Yeah.
I still like, no matter what, I love you. Or it could be like, I'm proud of you. Because like, you're like, it's like, we're not gonna always tell you that like our self-worth is being questioned sometimes, or our self-confidence is kind of like ebbing and flowing as we're realizing all these things. And so I think that just saying those simple things is also helpful.
Wow.
Hit it on the head, Brennan.
It's just so interesting, because
that's why you're an author, Brennan.
I'm listening to you, and Charles started therapy a couple months ago, maybe 3 or 4 months.
4 months ago.
And I'm reflecting, like, as you're talking, like, well, how did I respond And I knew you were doing something that was hard, and I wanted to like be there physically and like, do you want to talk about it? Like, did you?
She wanted to do therapy session debriefs.
Right. I already did it. I'm good.
I just wanted to make sure, that I don't know, but I understand what you're saying, that like it's a lot of work and you can't do it twice. And sometimes it's not necessary for you to go into that with your partner as much. I think sometimes we look at our partners to be like a therapist, and that's not always healthy, and that's not always necessary, especially when you're already putting in the work with someone else.
Absolutely.
A licensed someone else. Like, I think that's a very important part of that.
So I don't want to miss this point. Why should Black men go to therapy? Because we're talking about counseling, and a lot of brothers who might be listening who is like, bro, I don't even know what to anticipate when I sit on the couch or I turn into the virtual session. Like, why is it, and I would deem it an absolute necessity. Black men go to therapy.
Oh yeah. I mean, to preface all of this, like me and Adriana both have said, like, prior to dating each other, like our intention was we were not dating anyone else who had not been in counseling, currently in counseling, or like strong intentions to start very soon. And so we're both in counseling currently. But I think that Black men specifically, I think that there are so many, like, I think that men specifically compartmentalize. I think Black men Black men have to compartmentalize even more when it comes to different experiences they've had. Like, you cannot tell me that like seeing a Black man that like looks like you, in some cases like your very same age, very same build, your very same whatever,
everything,
like, getting killed on the screen is not traumatic for you. Like, that's just not normal. That is not normal. And so I think that from like a societal perspective, the things that we deal with, the things that we go through, like we are conditioned like historically to be like tough. Like, I think like you go back to slavery, like, and men were like whipped in front of their families. Like, and like on depictions we see now, men ain't crying after they get whipped. Like, they're not gonna cry. Their family's gonna cry, but they're not gonna cry. They might they're gonna experience the pain, but they're gonna hold it in as much as they can. And so like that's just something we've been conditioned to do for centuries now. And so I think that like it is your default for Black men is to kind of compartmentalize and keep everything in. And so I think having someone that is paid to listen to you, literally paid to listen to you and paid to help you work through some things is so necessary if like you want to be free. I talk about wholeness a lot. Like, we have so many Black men out here not experiencing the fullness of life because of that. I think about like another piece is that it has made me so much better in relationships, both romantically and platonically. And I want so badly to have relationships that are beautiful, that are life-giving, and that requires me to have done a lot of the personal work to where I can at the very least tell you how I'm feeling if something has bothered me. And I think there's so many men and so many of my brothers who like before like something happened, something would happen to them that like I know caused them pain and I know hurt them, and they're like, oh, but it's nothing. It is what it is. And it's like, no, like this made me feel sad. This made me feel angry because, or this made me like feel hurt because, like, I think that relationship piece is huge. And like you can't get there if you're not doing the work. And I think counseling is one of the major ways to do that.
Absolutely. And to folk listening, like, I know for me, I don't think that if I wasn't in therapy the summer that me and Jasmine started talking, I think we would be where we are now. Genuinely. Because I came back, I studied abroad, but I was depressed abroad. Like, thoroughly. I was in a whole nother country.
Yeah.
standing on the top of the sand dunes in Morocco, sad, like it's all get out.
Yeah.
And I told myself, I was like, when I get home, because like where was I gonna go, Margo? I'm going to do everything in my power to get back to a place that felt more familiar. Because at a certain point, especially like what you said, you maneuver the pain and it's so isolating, but it's different because it's like you're isolating within yourself. It's almost like you're like hiding from another part of who you are. That's what my mental illness really felt like. So then when I got home, I immediately was like, let me find a therapist, which isn't always a foolproof.
Right.
And I think it's important to note that like sometimes you have to try 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before you find somebody who can truly pour into you. But I found someone by the grace of God and started that work, and then slowly but surely worked my way out of a very like low point in my life. But that really was the necessary seed for me to be a better person in relationships, because I was coming out of a relationship too that had placed a weight on my mental health as well. So you bring up a great point when you talk about just the fact that therapy and having somebody being able to help you decompartmentalize, you put in these little different parts of who you are and kind of like unjumble it and make it make sense, right? And kind of a better outlook of who you are in your entirety. That ultimately makes you look at life differently. It makes you look at life differently, and it makes you interact with those people in your life differently. So without that, and I wasn't in therapy that long. I was in it for like maybe a few months just to like jumpstart the process. And that really put me in the position where I was a better partner. Without that, I don't even know if we're sitting here right now. So you really like, that's a really great point. And I think it's also important to note, like, the process for Black men getting into therapy is definitely a representation of just like access in this country as well.
Yeah.
I'm blessed to have health insurance. So to find my current therapist, I went on Psychology Today, look who took my insurance in the area, had a list, make some calls, and send some emails, and then process of elimination. But for some people who like might not have that access, there are several different like pro bono. We give to pro bono counseling project all the time. In the area, but there's a lot of different like free resources. You just have to do a quick Google search. So I wanted to put that out there. But getting back to the relationship piece, can you speak to, I guess, for folk who are in relationship, the necessity behind making sure that you can work on your mental health while in relationship? Because everyone always thinks you got to be single before, you know what I'm saying?
You got to be whole.
You got to be whole while you single. Step in, but like I feel like that's not the whole story.
Reality,
no, like that is wild, because I think like my fiance and I probably two months in. I don't know. We go back and forth from when we actually started dating, but we had that like kind of moment, like we were both like triggering each other a lot, and we're like, do we need to take a step back and like be friends while we both get this figured out for a little bit, or do we think we can do it at the same time? And I think ultimately, like for me, like the alternative I didn't like the idea of not being with her. And so like we ended up staying together. But I think it's shown that like we have been able to still keep space and take the time to focus on our individual mental health while being in a relationship. I think that it just requires the perspective of like what you were saying, Jasmine, earlier, that like your partner is not your therapist. Like your partner is not the person that is going to make you whole or like fix you or whatever. Like it is, it's like something that y'all are kind of, I feel like we have been journeying on it together. So like we are able to, we're able to discuss some of the things that we find out about ourselves in counseling. And it also gives us a very like specific case study in a way of like the ways in which the wounds that I have show up. And so I can see how they show with her. And so then helps me like more specifically, like adjust, or more specifically be intentional about the way that I operate. And so I think that a lot of times, like, as long as you have that perspective coming in, that like I'm not looking to her to, or I'm not looking to him to change me and to transform me. That like a relationship can actually be a very like healthy, and depending on the relationship, a very safe way to actually grow and become the person that you want to be.
Yeah. Wow. That to me makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times your romantic relationships are the most intimate relationships you're going to be in. And in that, a lot of the things that you've been able to bury with your friends and with your family come to the forefront when you're with this person more than anyone else. When this person's supposed to be the one that knows you better than anyone else, like that time is bound to come where I say something, or I do something, or you say something, or you do something that's like, that's not sitting right with me. And we're going to have to talk about this if we're going to continue in a healthy way. So it's interesting. Charles has been in therapy for a while, but I have had a trying time trying to find a therapist. So I'm on the spectrum that's like, I have insurance, but my insurance doesn't cover therapy. So I find someone outside. It's a whole thing, and really shed light for me on how difficult it can be. The thing can be there, the finances can be there, but it's like there's still a barrier to actually getting into a therapist's office. But something that we've talked about, and I'm curious to see if you and Adriana feel the same way, is that even post-marriage, we've already made the decision that therapy is just going to be a normal part of our lives, like couples therapy as well as individual therapy, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 5 years from now, let alone 10 years from now. And just having therapy in our corner is just, and like our faith, and then therapy in our really, to me, gives me a sense of safety and like where we're going next.
No, I definitely agree. I almost wore my Jesus in therapy hoodie.
For real though. For real.
Adriana and I both have one. And like we wore it. Where did we wear it? We went to Nashville to see my parents, and we both wore it. They're like, oh, so that's what y'all was, like that's it. Like,
yes.
That's the two most important pieces. I think like, we are currently in premarital counseling, and like that's like we're gonna continue doing stuff after. I think like we both are in a better spot now, and so like I am gonna transition to going once a month. Adriana has hers like as needed, so it's like it's not the type of thing where like for the rest of your life you need to go every week. Like that might not be true. Hopefully, like you get enough tools to where you can deal with life on your own. But to have someone that's always like there and knows you, I think is really important for when things do get a little tougher, and when you experience, like we're about to go into a whole new season of our lives where neither of us have been married before, so we don't know what it's not going to be like. And so I think that that's definitely resonates with us too.
Yeah, it's big wow. Because I know that it's just something that is going to be relevant, a necessity, because we don't know the journey of mental health that we're going to go on, because we don't know how life is going to rock out. And we Black.
Exactly.
Life is hard off top. You feel what I'm saying? So I think like therapy is just one of those resources that I just encourage like everybody, if you are Black, go, like it's to me it's a requirement. Like do whatever you have to do to sit in front of somebody who is just going to be just open in everything that you're telling them, because there's so much that we just stock up as a result of just maneuvering life. Because if we were to just talk about everything that we've ever been through every single day from the moment we were born, like we would be talking for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I know for me is just it's really opened up just the opportunity for me to just brain dump everything that I might have thought that I was over. A lot of times, like when you compartmentalize, you forget certain things, And then you might start talking to your therapist or your counselor, and you start connecting the dots of like, oh, this trauma actually was connected to another trauma that I thought I had gotten through, or I thought wasn't even trauma in the first place.
Right.
That's another thing that Black men maneuver is sometimes we think that we'll go through some things that really, when you look at it, very messed up.
Yeah.
Because society tells us to just keep it pushing, we don't even really chalk it up to something that negatively affected us.
Sure.
So I really think that journals, especially, and this is why I really appreciate Breathe, it makes you sit down and be intentional in what you're thinking about and what you've maneuvered and how your brain has downloaded certain information.
Yeah.
And I really, if you could speak to that part, because I want to hone in on the book especially. We should probably do a time check. I think we got like a few minutes.
Yeah.
So if it drops off, Brennan, like we can just hop back on.
Okay. Sounds good.
Because we gonna go for a little bit. The book has certain prompts, and I think the prompts really help too, because sometimes you don't even know where to start. Yeah. But I just kind of want to speak to the fact that, like, how did you think structuring it that way was going to really be helpful with someone who really was trying to go on like a journey?
Yeah, I think that's why I'll go back to my point about just the thought process behind it was just like connected to me being a teacher. And so like everything I do now as a teacher, like outside of being a teacher, is like pedagogical in its approach. Yeah. So I think about like, you know, just like the gradual release. So like, I'm going to do it. We're going to do it. Now you're going to do it by yourself.
Yep, exactly. I do, we do, you do.
Right. Yes. And so I think like that's the same idea in terms of like having the three phases. So you have like the guided journal, and then you have the self-directed journal, and then you just have like
a journal.
You just write. And so I think that is important, because I think that, I mean, the first draft of it was just a bunch of questions, and I just like, this is just not, it's not compelling for me. I think this is boring looking back through it. But then also like, I need to push. And I need to know where I got to remember where I was pushed. And it was like, so like there was some questions like, well, like, what's your biggest fear? And I can say that, but then like my comments like, so why do you fear that? I'm like, oh, that's harder. Like that's a little too much. And so like trying to take from my experiences, but then also connecting it to like being very like strategic in the way that I like helped men kind of process through, so that if people like who have similar experiences to me could like get a lot from it, and in terms of like having been in counseling prior to doing it, but also like my dad, who's never thought about anything, is going through it now. He's going through it slow, but like he's going through it.
Yeah,
he turned into a 90-day. Okay,
right. It's about 365 for him.
That's crazy, but it's really just like, it's refreshing, you know, just overall, just having something that I know is specifically for us. So my question is this going to be the start of something? Are you going to hang it up? What's that? What we doing?
Man, I have a lot of dreams for sure. I think the hardest piece is also being a full-time teacher. But I think I am shifting into the social emotional learning space in schools. And so it's kind of going to become more thematic in my life. But definitely thinking about rolling out a Black boys version, because I think this is probably about 16 and up, as what I've been telling people. And so one that's more specific for boys that I teach, and being able to like really pilot it with them, and maybe making it more of a curriculum than just a journal, just because I feel like there's a lot more that needs to be done when it comes to students. I think about kind of doing some, I know there's a lot of communities have been kind of popping up on their own, which has been really dope. Like people will text me or DM me on Instagram, and it'll be like, yeah, me and my frat brothers are all going through it. Or me and my friend, I live in New York, my friend lives in Ohio, my other friend lives in California. We get on Zoom and do it. Like we talk about it once a week or whatever. That's been really dope. But thinking about just how to offer more support, because I know there are some Black men that are only doing it by themselves. So I've been in talks with some other folks about trying to develop a community around it. just giving a little bit more support, because I know it is hard, and especially if you don't have any context for it, it's a lot to do. So yeah, it's a lot down the pipe, coming down the pipeline. Hopefully, just trying to find the time to do it.
That's real. Oh, it's so
kudos
amazing.
to you, man. Like, this is such, when we talk about the ugly work, this is the beautiful work. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is really folk recognizing like a mental health journey is definitely one of the most personal journeys you can ever go on. But once you transition into a space where you're better, right, where you're really kind of like a little bit lighter in the way that you're maneuvering your own mind, you can start to pour into other individuals who you know need that help, need that push, and encouragement to really go on that journey for themselves. So number one, thank you, because a lot of, I mean, I know for me, when I came to a certain spot, I did kind of have like an outlook of, let me look for folk who are definitely in the midst of their woods, their darkness, and let me see how I can minister to them in any capacity that could get them a little bit closer to kind of that like exhale moment.
Yeah.
Journals like Breathe are definitely an example of someone really trying to do that work. So we really appreciate you, bro, because like it's not enough of it, and you're really setting the pace for real.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that for sure.
You got any other questions for my man, Brennan?
I think I'm good. Do you?
I could talk to you for about 6 more hours, bro. But like Zoom wouldn't let us. Like folk probably, you know what I'm saying, gonna ebb and flow in this episode anyway. So we just want to say we appreciate you.
Yes, this has been phenomenal, Brennan.
Well, thank you all for having me, for sure. Like I said earlier, I was honored to be asked to be on here. I really appreciate what y'all are doing. I'm really excited for y'all and everything that God's gonna do for y'all too.
Thank you,
man. Go get his book now. We're gonna put the link in the description, obviously. But like, get a book for you, your nephew, your uncle, your dad, your brother, your frat brother. Everybody needs to be doing this book, because it's such vital work for the community. But until you get that book and it's in your mailbox and it's on your doorstep, stay hopeful.
Thank you so much, Brennan.
Thanks, man.
All right, y'all.